Peace and blessings, everybody. Hotep, Katapu, Assalamu alaikum, bonjour, Yunakusho. We're here today, and we're going to continue with the African Ancestral Manuscript, a book written by myself. Every day, we're going to talk and tell a story of an ancestor. The ancestor is going to come back alive in our lives because they need to enable us to achieve our goals, to reach for those ripe fruits, pick them and cultivate them and bear testament to who they were and who we are. Great people. Ashe. Today we're going to read a section about Walter Rodney. Even though he wasn't born today, today is March the 10th, 2022. He was actually born on February the 23rd, 1942. And his story is such. So in our tradition in Sierra Leone, I will say eel, and you can say ow at home. Eel, ow. Walter Rodney was born in Georgetown, British Guyana on February 23rd, 1942, just during the Second World War. From an early age, he was involved in the anti-colonial and nationalistic politics. He was an excellent scholar and won a scholarship to study history in the University of the West Indies, UWI. That's a great school. I know I've been there and I've done some poetry alongside Warrior King. It was a great experience. His combination of commitment and skills encouraged Rodney to think about the ways in which history could be used to help ordinary working people. Just like we're doing now, we're using our story and history to help ordinary people like yourselves, your children, to improve your life. He went to England to study African history. There he was experienced the crude racism. I know I've been to England. There's a crude racism and really island mentality xenophobia. And he experienced the cruel racism of the period. At the same time, he gained a better understanding of the worldwide nature of the struggle against racism and what he could do to assist it. So he got a global perspective, and it's very important. Some people stay in their little silos, little countries, and they don't get a global experience of racism, and they don't link the dots. Being an international African myself, having been born in the continent, grown up in Europe and Switzerland, and also grown up in North America, I know that lots of people who don't have that experience can associate with the global African consciousness, and this is what Walter Rodney did. Rodney tried to put his ideas into practice when he accepted a job of teaching African history at the University of Dar es Salaam. Shout out to all my TZ people. I know there are many of them. I grew up with many people from Tanzania, in Switzerland, and Geneva. There were many very positive, uplifting brothers and sisters who I appreciate a lot from TZ. So shout out to the people from TZ. Here he became involved in the discussions around the role of the university in making a more just and equal society. His belief that universities could contribute to making a better society for working people was also evident when he left Tanzania to teach at the University of the West Indies in Jamaica. He gave lectures about African history and Black power to anyone who would listen, and he took time to know and to learn from poorest communities of the island, especially the Rastafarians. So he went to the Rastafarian people. He learned from them in all humility. They say if you know that you don't know, then you'll know. But if you don't know that you don't know, then you will never know. So he was open and humble to learning from the Rastafarians, who were very disenfranchised at the time, but had lots of knowledge. Of course, the wonderful man called Walter Rodney, you can see him right here with his nice afro, Pan-Africanist vibe. Okay, through his educational work and political organization, Rodney became a leader of the Black Power movement in Jamaica, which he defined to include Caribbean people of both African and East Indian heritage. The government banned Rodney's re-entry on his return from a Black Writers Conference in Canada. So can you imagine? You're going back home from Canada, and then they just say you're banned, can't get back in the country. That's the type of terrorist activity that the governments of those days were doing because they were in the pocket of the enslavers and the colonizers. And he returned to the University of Dar es Salaam. At the time, Dar es Salaam was the center of great a great deal of political thinking and activity. This environment inspired Rodney to think more deeply about solving practical political, economic, and cultural problems. He lectured and published extensively on the African history, contemporary African affairs, and imperialism during this period, which also saw the publication of his best known work. And this, pardon me to say, this is one of the best books I've ever read. I have it in my library. I recommend that you pick it up if you don't have it. It's How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. He goes very deep. He goes very profoundly into the matter. He puts everything in context. It's not superficial. He talks about before enslavement. He talks about the Berlin 1886, splitting up the countries. He talks of all the integration of the Europeans and their planning and structure to help continually destabilize Africa. And up until today, that book is relevant. Okay, so pick it up. However, he came to realize that there was only so much he could do as a foreigner in Tanzania and decided to commit himself to working for change in Guyana. So by that time, when he was working, even though when he was born it was British Guyana, now it had become Guyana, right? Okay, so in 1974, Rodney and his family returned to Guyana with the promise of teaching in a post-secondary university. However, the government of Forbes Burnham did not let Rodney take up the job because they did not want him to use his skills to help popular resistance against it. Even so, Rodney helped set up the Working People's Alliance, WPA, which was committed to the removal of Burnham and the system of government which he installed with the help from both Britain and the US. Now we're talking about encroachment into foreign lands. The US and Britain have always been encroaching in the Caribbean from time immemorial. Cuban Missile Crisis, Haiti, Grenada, you name it. So we need to stop being hypocritical. The U.S. has always been encroaching into people's territory, people's land, and devastating people. Whitey was dedicated to the removal of Burnham, who was installed by the British and the U.S., and the WPA believed that only the people could achieve this goal and encourage people towards mass action against the government. The government began the campaign to destroy the WPA, and the movement was energizing. It was energizing the movement for the people to reclaim, just like people like Thomas Sankara, people political education like Steve Biko, people like Kwame Nkrumah, people like Amilcar Cabral, people, the great ones, the great African leaders who, Agostinho Neto, who wanted, Samora Machel, who wanted really for our people to be autonomous of the European conglomerates. Okay, one aspect of that campaign was to eliminate the WPA leadership. That's what the government was trying to do. On 13th of June 1980, Walter Rodney was assassinated by a bomb. Can you imagine? You in your own country trying to help your own people, and they put a bomb and explode you to death. That's very miserable. It's very definitely something which is very regrettable. It's a crime against humanity. News of his murder sparked outrage around the world, and massive funeral procession in Guyana in defiance of the government, as people mourned the great activity of this activist and scholar, whose memory and courage remain entrenched in our memory. Even up till this day, he's revered and loved around the world as a true revolutionary brother. His book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, I suggest that as political education for anybody who wants to understand the underlying elements of post-colonialism, neo-colonialism, and all types of structural racism, which has been practiced ever since. Great man Walter Rodney, once again, brother, looked real good too with his nice afro, his nice daishiki, his nice courageous outstand and standing up against the man. We are the man, but we are God men. We need to continue that in that path. Once again, I'd like to say Ashe, give thanks to Walter Rodney. As you see, I have my brother Malcolm and Haj Malik El Shabazz on my t-shirt. We got to wear these people. We got to respect them. We got to call upon them when we're in dire straits. Believe me, we will get assistance out of the blue. Peace and blessings. I'd like to say Ashe to Walter Rodney, to the memory, pour libation, call out his name, be dignified in learning about him, teaching your children about him, and continue to uplift yourself with your African ancestral truth. Go to the Shepsudwa, to the Ngungun. Peace and blessings to one and all. Enjoy a peaceful lovely and uplifting Sebek cycle. Remember, Sebek represents Elegba Eshu. It's the opener of the way. And on this day, this month, what I'm trying to do is open up the way so our ancestors can contribute to give us a better day. Ashe.